All right, welcome everybody to our QC webinar for Hector Orchard Management Software. We are happy to have you here today. It looks like there are some of you, it's morning for you here on the West Coast. And hello to those of you who have made it through to your afternoon on the East Coast. We're happy to have you here. Next, we're gonna just go over who you're talking to really quick. So your hosts today, that's me. Elizabeth Hargrave. I'm the solutions engineer at Hector Orchard Management Software. And I've been with Hector for about 3 years now and help customers with their implementations and kind of know how to use their product to the best of their abilities. And then we also have Omar Gomez, who's our regional account executive. His face might be familiar in conversations that you've had over the past couple of years. And yeah, today we're going to talk to you about QC in the field. It's one of the top topics of our software right now. So I'm just going to run you through the agenda really quick. We're going to do a quick introduction to QC. There are lots of QC tools out there. And so we'll show you where our focus lies. We'll also talk to you about the previous way of doing things, how digital QC can solve the problem, and we'll give some real world examples of that too, so that you're not just taking a look at a product demo, you're actually talking about or listening to real life examples. So that'll be number 4, the digital QC in action. And then we'll take some questions and hopefully answer them. And that's it. So without further ado, I will kick it off to Omar.
Hey, good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Just wanted to give a quick background on who Hector is. We started out in the orchard with digital timesheets with the advice and feedback of growers, and the product was built around their knowledge and their suggestions as to what they wanted to see out in a product, especially with so many ag tech companies popping up. And like I mentioned, it started with those digital timesheets, and it's evolved to some of that post-harvest digital QC on the field, which we'll cover today, and some of our sizing and color estimation platform portion as well. Just a little bit of background, we have over 25,000 hectares that our customers currently run. We're in over 5 countries, spreading from New Zealand, Australia, the US, Canada, Chile, Spain, the Czech Republic, Italy, and hopefully to grow more as we roll out the system in different parts of the world. Been globally recognized the last 2 years by the Ag Tech Awards. So that's been awesome to see a lot of our hard work get the recognition it deserves out in the industry. And, with our team of employees, we have people with experience in the packing side, out in the field, advisors that are growers. So everything we have is centered around tree fruit, and it's taken in part by growers and their suggestions on what they want to see in a product. So first thing I want to touch here is the previous way on dealing with QC and picker performance. So like I said, everything that we have and that we've built has been based on grower suggestions. So one thing, a common theme we heard from our customers and growers out in the field was no easy way of tracking QC on the field, not enough time to track it, especially during harvest. Things get a little crazy. So moving at the speed it does, having the time to sit there and write it down wasn't really logical, or at the end of the day, they couldn't make decisions based on that. The other way was a spreadsheet, an Excel out in the field, which if you're not Excel savvy could be difficult, or training a manager how to do that also proved to be difficult. So none of the ways that they explained that they were doing it or not doing it related to an effective and useful tool for them out in the field. So a lot of things went uncovered, whether that was picker damage, cosmetic, or tracking picker performance. No real easy way to see that. The next big portion of this was, is my staff doing enough QC out in the field? If they aren't, why aren't they doing that? And if they are, how can I easily see that in real time without having to call them and ask them to share that with me? And how do I know either way if they did a good job on the QC side, right? Am I just taking their word for it? Is there an identifier log of that? Is it in a notebook, as in that Excel spreadsheet I mentioned, or is it just in their head? And during harvest, are they going to remember exactly where that QC and who picked that bin during the crazy time of harvest? So getting all that information back to an owner or manager from a supervisor was proven to be difficult for some of our growers out in the field. I think as growers, packers, I think defects are just a part of life. The goal is to get the least amount of those inside the bin. On the tree, you can't help it. Mother Nature is Mother Nature. So one of the big themes we heard was trying to get as minimal of that fruit into the bin as possible. Ultimately, try to lead to a higher generate a higher revenue for the grower. So having an easy way to see those defects and avoid them getting in the bin was a major issue a lot of our growers mentioned and wanted to solve. Ultimately, when that fruit slips through the cracks and gets into the bin, it gets into that packing shed, it gets cold, it gets thrown away, it gets juiced, and it leads to a lower revenue for the grower. And we're all trying to work for that grower to make sure they produce as much as possible and are here the next year. So getting timely information on that QC activity. Like I mentioned in the past, you relied on a supervisor or a manager to have that information in their head and hopefully share that with you at the end of the day or at the end of the week. What we found was that didn't allow for much time to do proactive and corrective measures. It led to end of season after that fruit was already picked and shipped off. And at that point, you really can't do anything out in the field and there's no record of it, right? So you can't see historical trends. And that's what we're trying to solve here with this QC module. This is where we have built our tool. So now we have the digital QC. So all that in your head on a notebook, on a piece of paper, on an Excel sheet. We've eliminated the need for all that. We've centralized it in one location, made it easy to use for your users, because ultimately, if it's difficult to use for the end user, that information won't get into the system, and the system's pointless unless the user inputs that information. So we've centralized everything in one location and ultimately made it one of the simplest tools for the end user to input that data. So now we have digital QC, right? So talking about it is one thing, seeing it is another. So I just wanted to share a quick video on what that digital QC looks like. Hey, thank you. I appreciate you guys all taking time to take a look at that there. So some practical impacts of having a digital QC out in the field is identify where poor picker performance trends are coming from. So being easily able to identify teams that are struggling, doing a great job, and comparing them to each other is one way that the digital QC on the field really has an impact on improving those picker performance trends and easily identifying those and comparing them, whether that's cosmetic, picker damage, pest, and disease. The digital QC on the field really helps identify that. And at the same time, not just a punitive measure, but maybe identify a star on the field who's keeping his trend over a 95%, over a 90%. And that ties to a bonus, that ties to congratulations. We've had customers use it as a competition out in the field. Who can do a better job today as a team? Who can do a better job at the end of the week or at the end of the month? And turn it into a fun game. And doesn't always have to be punitive. We found with our customers who are using the digital QC on the field, there's other ways to implement it and make it a team building exercise for you and your crews out in the field. as I mentioned earlier, right, less fruit damage equals more revenue. Ultimately, the goal here is to increase the revenue for the grower, get that fruit packed, shipped, and sold to the wholesaler. And how we do that to increase the revenue is to get the best quality fruit inside the bin. And the QC module, where we've seen customers, specifically one, he implemented this across his fields, but only to his ambrosia variety. He felt, trying to do it to every single one might be a little much for his crew. So focusing on one really helped him hone in, and he was able to increase his ambrosia packout by 15%. So my question for you and your team is, what would 15% do to your bottom line in revenue on a specific variety if we just think about it on a micro level? And then you go to the macro, what would it do across all your varieties? And then you can start focusing on different ones you feel need the most help, or maybe a team that you feel really needs to help improve on this aspect of the business. The last part of this I want to talk about here is the QC reporting that we have. As I mentioned earlier, you're able to compare different teams and compare their packouts and see their historical trends, whether that means you're able to look at on a whole macro level for the whole year. Maybe a team particularly was poorly consistently, and maybe it was just a few team members. So maybe those specific team members aren't hireable for next year. Now you have that information on record, can see the report. Within the system, as you saw in the demo, you're able to include images, notes, so you're able to tie that back to a specific picture. So it's no longer he said, she said, it's concrete evidence. And at the end of the day, you can extract all of this data and run a Tableau report, create some specific Power BI reports that are useful for you, your business, as you're making decisions in the off season for the next harvest, right? Because ultimately we plan all year for those 3 months, and having that information relatively easy and accessible for everybody on the team can have long impacts on that revenue and the planning that you do for the upcoming season. So ultimately, I hope what you and the team got out of this is being able to identify and address quality issues immediately, view and analyze picker performance trends and fruit defects in real time, and then generate digital Q sheets directly from your mobile device, or being able to log in to our dashboard and extract that data, feed it into your current systems, whether that's a Power BI tool, whether you're using an analytics company to do some of that for you. We're happy to extract all of our data, give it to you raw, and then you do with it as you please. Because we know every farm, every company is different. They do things their own way, and we want to make that data readily available and as easy as possible to extract. I appreciate you guys taking your time and listening to that. Hopefully it was beneficial and you found some good quality nuggets out of that. I'm going to pass this over to Elizabeth here to run a quick QC demo for you guys.
All right, hello everyone. We're taking a look at the QC module within Hector right now. What I like to do is step back and take a look at the end result so you can actually see what all the inputs do to get you to the spot where you're actually able to have the conversations with your pickers about how they're picking, what defects they're seeing, and how that results in a better pack out. So we have growers that are using this in order to coach their pickers so they get better fruit in the bin. And we have other growers who are using it to incentivize pickers and pay out a bonus based off of a good sample rate. So as you can see here, we have Carlos, Jimmy, Juan, Maddie, Roman, and Tim that are on the team today. Tim Jones is at the bottom. I haven't selected, but let's go into Juan Garcia and Jimmy Berlin. You can see their bins QC'd and their user pack out as well. So Jimmy, let's say he started out really, really well. Earlier today, his bin looked great. He went downhill a little bit, and then we'll say that we had a picking conversation with him and said, hey, these are the defects we're seeing, and you'll see that number skyrocket up. Of course, this is just a demo account, so you're seeing these bins are recorded over a 3-minute period, which is not very realistic. But what you'd actually see in this graph at harvest is those bins spread out throughout the day, or throughout multiple days to show how that picker performance is tracking. So at the top, you'll see that we're selecting today, but we can take a look at the last 7 days. Looks like he's just been packing today, and then the last 30 days. So for example, back in February, his pack out percent was at 68. You'll see that at the bottom in that graph. Peaked up to 88 and then back down today on March 30th. So you'll see the bins QC'd. We've QC'd 4 of his bins. So I'm going to select those 3 little dots right there, tap on them, and you can actually go in and show him and have a conversation with him about how his picker performance is doing. So you'll see here that compared to the team's bruising, he's picking more apples that have bruises, but he's really good at spotting those punctures and stem holes because he's below the team on those defects, as well as scuffs. But for some reason, he just can't spot bruises. So that's a little coaching point right there. We'll hit this little arrow button that's off to the right, and you'll see that on March 30th, you have some of the same issues, except now he's not spotting those stem holes, bruises, and scuffs. We'll see this when pickers are rushing through jobs just to get their bin count, but of course it's a balance. We want to make sure that all of that fruit that's making it into the bin is acceptable. So these are the sorts of conversations that you can have based off of the data that you're entering into Hector. It's a great way to be more objective about your conversations. It's not a he said, she said sort of thing. And then you're also able to compare them to different people on the team. So we've got Maddie here, we've got Roman, we've got Tim. And so we're taking a look at a basic team right now. So I'm going to go back and show you where that QC information is entered. So I'm popping up into this navigation screen, these 3 little lines in the top left corner, tapping on that, going into picking, and this is where we're actually editing the bins. So there are a couple of different ways to get that QC information in. So you'll see, and let's take, for example, one of Jimmy Berlin's bins right here. You can see that that QC is blue. That means that the bin has actually been QC'd. If it hasn't been QC'd yet, it would show up red. So I'm going to tap on that, and you'll see one of the QCs for that particular bin included in this account. So this is where we're actually showing the different picker damages that have been entered. So I'm actually going to go to another one here. So as you can see, we've got 1, 1, and 1. All good there. Not too bad. All right, so you might ask, on this left-hand side, we see all of these bins that have been tracked. Each bin has a unique identifier, the 4 characters for every single one of these bins. They might be asking, okay, well, how do we QC a bin? Well, Hector, how it works is we either scan a barcode on a bin. So using this little QC function, we'll scan a barcode. We support 12 different barcodes. We can either use Hector bin tickets or bin tickets that you already have. And then we associate all of these default information pieces with the particular bin that we're taking a look at. So right now, what we've said is for today, for this particular supervisor, I'm pretending like I'm a supervisor right now. We have grade A quality. It's our first pick. We're in Goodfellow Farms. We're in Block A. We're picking galas at a $20 rate. That volume on the bottom is at 100%, and that's okay. It just means that the bin is 100% full, so you're going to pay for that entire bin. So if we go back, as we see below the defaults that we just took a look at, we have some names. So I'm actually going to select Jimmy Berlin right here. And then I'm going to go down to that bottom right and save and create the new bin. So you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either scan that bin tag that you already have and associate a QC with it, or you can create your own bin tag and associate QC with it. So I'm just gonna take a look at this one that we just created. You'll see that 05UB on the left-hand side. That's Jimmy's latest bin, and you'll see that that QC is in red. So I'll pop in and tap on that QC, and we'll add a new QC. So we'll say we saw one puncture and a couple scuffs and maybe a bruise. And then you'll see that comment section. So if I wanted to, I could say, Jimmy, getting better, but still missing some punctures. Great. And then we'll add a photo. Since I don't have apples in front of me, I'm just going to take a picture of my desk, hit OK. You'll see that picture is uploaded, and we'll save it there. And we're all good to go. And so you'll see that 05UV, that QC is now blue. So if we go back to the navigation menu and to performance, Jimmy's Packout has been bumped up from 69% to 72% just today after a conversation. So and then we'll take a look at this picker and team performance, and it's looking better.
Elizabeth, thanks for that. Appreciate going through that quick video. So just Q&A time. So any questions you have, please drop in the chat, and we can answer them here now. Looks like our first one is, how easy is it for the staff to pick up digital QC if they're less tech savvy? We put a big emphasis on making the app really easy to function and intuitive. So as you saw Elizabeth running through that quick demonstration, they're really just clicking a button, whether that's the red QC, and then adding what they're seeing and selecting what sample size they want. So you can preset that sample size so they can't change that, and they know it's always 25. And then they add just whatever their eyes can see on that bin. And then, as was mentioned, even if they don't know which bin is there, they can just scan that identifier on there, and it'll pull it up, and they can QC it. So really the goal there is just to make it as easy as possible for them. Have really no issue to this point with people who are less tech savvy. They just need a little more training, and that's something we're happy to do.
Looks like we have another one that's come in. What are the costs associated with this?
Yeah, so this is per acre base as far as the cost. So depending on your size and what you want to do within the system, we have different modules. So that's something we can talk about if you're interested at a later time. So yeah, it's per acre cost, and it's a yearly fee.
All right, cool. And it looks like everything from the chat is done, but we do like to add a couple more questions, usually based off of questions that we often get in conversations. A lot of the questions come up later after the webinars. So a couple of them that we get asked quite often is what setting up something like this looks like. So Omar, do you want to take that too?
Yeah, I think that varies between customer, depending on their size and what they want to accomplish the first year. What I see a lot of the time is, they just want to start with digital timesheets and then introduce QC so they don't overwhelm their staff. And, it all goes back to size. If you have thousands of acres, trying to implement something like this on one run might not be beneficial for you and your staff. So we always recommend a tiered approach. So starting with a few crews you feel really confident, and then slowly rolling that out to others. So, it could be 3 weeks to set up, another month to train. Just really depends on what that's going to look like for you and your team and what you feel your company is comfortable with. So we take it case by case depending on the individual teams we're working with.
Mm-hmm. And then Omar, another question that comes up a lot. How much time does digital QC actually save for the QC team?
Yeah, I think that depends on how long does it take you to write something down. Are you already doing QC? So is that already taking up some of your time writing down a piece of note paper and then relaying that back to someone in the office or a manager or a supervisor? So just imagine all that being gone, being done on a tablet or phone, and they're able to see that in real time. So you no longer have to waste time writing it down, no longer have to waste time calling someone, explaining why this is happening. Now it's all in real time and they can access it at any time during the day. So that depends and varies on your team. So just eliminating paper, eliminating those phone calls throughout the day, and then being able to make some real-time corrections. So you can quantify that in time based on your operation and just get an idea of what that typically looks like.
Great, thank you. Any other last thoughts before we go forward?
I think one thing I always like to mention on this portion, because it comes out a lot, is does it make sense? Like, how can I do this across my organization? What I recommend, what I've seen to be the most successful, is starting with one variety, your highest grossing variety probably, to implement this with. It's an easy way to see an ROI, an easy way to get your team excited, and you can turn it into a game with everyone, like I mentioned earlier. And from there, it can trickle down to other varieties in the organization, and it makes it a little bit easier to implement and to get everyone on board. Because the data is only as good as what's input by the user out in the field. So just something I like to mention when we talk about QC out in the field.
If you are interested at all in getting more information, or if you want to reach out later, you can always reach out at hello@hector.com. And then I see some familiar faces and some not familiar faces on the call. So some of you already have our email. If you don't, this is a great way to reach out to us, and it'll get rerouted to Omar or I. So thanks so much for your time, and we'll turn the webinar off. All right, thanks. Bye.